Good morning, Secret Treasure Hunt Land. Marcus Rosiak here, and I want to give you a little bit more on Charleston. And, seemingly ruffled some feathers, of course, as you would imagine if I'm proposing get out of WPG. But in this one, I'm going to make the case and give you even more reason to get out of WPG, and that is the tie to Teddy. So I think many people believe, and I'll show you this, that this has a Teddy angle, right? I mean, we kind of see his picture there. Well, I'm going to give you even more. And I propose to you in this video that the last two lines of the verse very closely tie Teddy to the puzzle. So the problem in WPG or some of these other areas of Charleston, what is your tie to Teddy? Okay, I can tell you, I think this is the homage to Teddy. It wasn't New York. And there's not a Washington, D.C. puzzle. So this is it, folks, I think. And the angle, of course, is the Navy. So let's jump in and show you what we have. All right, there we go. Okay, so the last two lines of the verse tie to Teddy. That's what I'm proposing to you. Now, if this is the case, it strengthens Patriots Point, in my view, and it knocks these other ideas down, because what is your narrative? What is your theme? Okay, I'm giving you Patriots Point. It was brand new. Not brand new. It was several years old. I think about 4 or 5 years old when I think Byron was there. And, what's the story in that he's trying to tell us here versus what's the story in WPG? I don't know. A few people were hung there a couple centuries ago versus the story of the Maine and Teddy and how he revitalized the Navy and this huge aircraft carrier, which I don't know. I'm guessing that's the first time any civilian could get onto an aircraft carrier. Got to look that up. But yeah, this was a big deal back then in Charleston, and it sort of blends in now, and it's been so long, it's not a big deal. But anyway, I think that's the narrative here is Teddy in the Navy. And we know he likes military people. He likes the whole military angle, ships and guns and all that. So I think this is strong, folks. That's all I'm going to tell you. Okay, so we know there are three pieces of Charleston. One, the African immigrants. I don't know, is this up for debate? I hope not. I'm not going to spend any time on that. I think that's a certainty, especially given the history of Charleston. What's the you say Navy, it doesn't relate to the puzzle. Well, Charleston does, clearly, right? That's where all of the slave trade happened, sadly. And I think 80 or 90% of the slaves that came to the U.S. came through Charleston. So sadly, that is a part of the history. And I think that's well covered and believed. And then this is the one where I think people know Navy and ships, but they haven't really kind of wrapped it all together like this. And that's why I'm doing it. I think it's done at Patriots Point. Where else would you do it? In Charleston, besides Patriots Point. So that's the Navy. I think that's the angle. And then we kind of know this. We kind of know all this, right? But it just hasn't really been wrapped together, I think. So Teddy, this was a really cool colorized photo when he was Rough Riders, which I thought it almost looks like an actor or something, right? You're just seeing these black and white, but it's Teddy. So this is how it all read. This is the theme I think he's trying to give us. All right. So in 1897, McKinley appointed Roosevelt as the Assistant Secretary of the Navy. Okay, so we see the mask is I guess what we call it, and it's Fort Sumter, I think. And people say, well, but there's these other Fort Sumter references out there. The way I view these puzzle clues in that is I'm going with the big one. I'm going with the one that you would think of first, okay? And this outline, when you look at Fort Sumter, it's been done, and I don't know, some people maybe debate it, but, I like using the actual thing. Like, I don't think it's a plaque somewhere of Fort Sumter. I'm using Fort Sumter, right? And I've showed you guys this where we take the mask, and if you just align it on a map, the small hand points to Patriots Point. The big hand, I think, points out to the ocean. So I'm going with small hand. But this representation, I do apologize. There was a guy who sort of brought this to my attention, and I would give him props here, but I can't remember his name, that this Teddy photo. So please come forward and be a part of the Patriots Point team if you'd like. Um, this is so close to me. I don't know. So Teddy was the only sitting president to visit Fort Sumter. So gosh, if this isn't it, if this is not a match, I don't know what is. So where we talked about this on our the podcast that we did over the weekend is where are you comfortable or not comfortable making a leap of faith? And that's the challenge. It's very subjective. Maybe what you're interested to do and okay with, I'm not. In this instance, I'm going here, okay? And I'm using I'm saying it's Teddy, and it kind of makes sense historically. So I don't think this is risk, and the angle. So anyway, um, so he was, when you read about this, like he was the guy during the Maine, right? The sinking of the Maine, which is referenced in the verse. And this is one where I make a case. I talk about, hey, I don't think Byron's trying to trick us. However, he does tricky things that could mislead you, or and he's more than willing to let you go off. Just like I think GGP. People look at that, oh, GGP, and whoosh, off they go, and they're not really thinking through that all the actions on the shoreline in San Francisco. Here, he's referencing the capstan that came off the Maine, but the bigger story, I think, is the fact that Teddy revitalized the Navy on the back of this event. So read up on that. And this is your tie when you hearken to the words and all that. I think he's calling you over the bridge. Um, so I will say I don't have the verse worked out from the downtown over. Some other people have done this, and that's why I've sort of skipped over it. But I will come back to that, I promise. So in any case, yeah, there's a tie to WPG on the verse. I'm not sure you have more than that. Well, you certainly don't have as strong of a story as what I'm going to show you here, I think. So that's the channel I get. So now you got WPG in the ring with Patriots Point, right? And so what's the narrative? Is my question to you at WPG. What's he trying to tell you by taking you into this park that people say, was really run down back in 1981? So they said, well, he took you in a Grant Park and that was run down. They were putting money into it. That was the park in Chicago, and it's a huge park. It's 300 and some acres, I think. It's enormous. So yeah, there's gonna be places run down, but they were hosting all kinds of events all the time there in Grant Park. So I don't think the whole thing was run down. They put $1 million into a computer system for the big fountain there back in 1980. So they were putting money into this thing, and I don't think Grant Park was completely run down. 300 acres is my point. But WPG supposedly was really in bad shape. So I'm just saying that, hey, is Byron going to take you into WPG and show you this kind of really rundown place, even though it's nice today? Apparently wasn't then. Okay, so contrast that, he's got this incredible, aircraft carrier that nobody's ever been on, certainly civilians, I mean, and it was new and exciting. And anyway, okay, so here's Teddy. He was doing something with the naval officers, but yeah, read the research. He was a fan of the Navy from a very young boy. Two of his uncles were very involved for the Confederate side in shipbuilding. His mom's brothers, and they supposedly, I read this, I haven't verified it, but they built or sailed on like 60 ships. Or was it they did that, or they sunk 60 ships, something like that, but look it up. So he had a fascination with the Navy from very young all the way through. He wrote this epic book on the Navy. So Teddy and Navy, very strong. All right, so let's get into the verse. So I will tell you, I think this really strengthens the case for this theme that I'm talking about, which is Teddy and the Navy. Okay, those last 2 points. All right, so weights the fair remuneration. So remuneration, how many times have you used the word remuneration? Okay, it's just not, we don't use it very much, I don't think. Now, it's a fascinating story for me. least. So my dad, I can remember him teaching me what this word meant. This was when I was just a young boy. And it's basically the total compensation an employee receives for their work, including salary and other monetary benefits. Okay, so yeah, I go back to this idea that there are so few words in the verse that really matters, is that you can put a lot of chips on the words he uses. So I think Mark Van Dam in San Francisco put out a post recently, and he's like, hey, I think object of Twain's attention, I think that has a military connotation. I'm like, yeah, man, you're right. Now, it just so happens that it fits my interpretation and how you get from Fisherman's Wharf up to the bridge, stopping at Funston's grave marker. So, yeah, so same thing here. He's capitalizing fair, which tells you, hey, this is important. So what he's basically saying here is, fair compensation. So it's just an odd way to say it. So I think he's telegraphing something here. So what actually is that? So a fair remuneration is a square deal. So back in 1902, Teddy intervened in this labor dispute between a coal mine or the coal workers and the owners. And he's the first president to ever step in on this. They always just sort of hung back and really, I guess, didn't do anything. But they said, hey, this is going to shut down, fuel for homes and schools and hospitals. He's like, no way. So he jumps in and he basically secured higher wages for these guys, or helped them do so. And so the term that came out of that was a square deal. Okay. Now, not only that, did that term, but that became the rallying cry. That became his campaign slogan for 1904. So, yeah, that's a square deal. That was a huge, to me, this seems very Byron-esque, okay, is to take this moment, a huge moment in history, and work it into the puzzle, but do it in a very kind of crafty way. Again, it's a research. So I was reading about Teddy, and I think I've heard this term. I'd never made the connection, but yeah, I'm reading about it over the weekend, and I'm like, it's bingo. And so, is this the right connection? I think it is. I don't think, to me, there's no question it is. Maybe to you, it is. It's like, it could be. But what's your connection to this concept here presented in the verse at WPG? All right, so the next one also is huge for the Teddy Patriots Point camp. White House close at hand. We've talked about this. People debate the idea on this. I didn't know this until I looked it up. But Roosevelt undertook a huge renovation. He built the West Wing of the White House. Okay, it was a lot of money. I forget the amount, but he and his wife went through and just like redid the whole White House and added the West Wing that's used today. I mean, so he's very, very tied to what happened in the White House. But wait, there's more. It gets better. And I didn't know this factoid. Take a gander at this one. He officially named it the White House. Okay, so it used to be called several things. The Executive Mansion. He named it the White House. Okay, so I think this one, even though the square deal is, gosh, what a great fit, in my opinion. But this is the president named the White House. So he's saying White House close at hand. So he's able to work, again, this incredible piece of presidential lore into the puzzle. And I think these are what you're seeing here in these last two verses. And I had to get this out because maybe there's others in the verse there, but these stuck out to me. This ties Teddy in even more so. So not only do we see his image and his connection to the nation, so you see how this interweaves together and how cool of a story this is versus if you're in WPG, you don't have this narrative and this interesting facts of history that we're uncovering now by being in Patriots Point and focusing on the Navy and Teddy. So that's what I have for you here today. And you guys have seen this. I showed this. Now we have this visual that we got when we received Patriots Point published this photo from '82 looking back to the target area. Now, in the first videos that I cut on this, I said specifically we need a picture of this area to validate overlaying the mask on top of the old parking lot in the pier area. And we got it. So this is, it matches so close. Like those teeth are flags and they're right where they should be when you do this overlay. And then I think you follow that small hand. But even underneath the mouth, there's this darker area. Again, when you look at the old overheads from the 80s, you see that. So the match is incredible. So that puts you right next to the old white house, which is not there anymore. So that's part of the reason I think it's a challenge. They redid this area, I think, a year or two after '81. So you don't have all these visuals. Like, you just have to go and really hunt it out. So in any case, that's what I have for you today. I hope you like it. Let me know your thoughts.